All right, welcome back to the Magnetism Podcast, guys and girls. This is episode 7. I'm your host, Tuan, the founder of GlowOps Media, and this is the space where the creator economy, where the psychology of influence, and where culture all connected, all collide together. Okay, so every single week, I'm going to riff off of some of the unseen signals that shape how people show up, from fitness to fashion to brand building. Because what makes someone magnetic isn't necessarily always in the strategic execution or in the playbooks, but it's in the story, it's in the energy, it's in the presence that they carry, right, in every given chosen moment. All right, so I'm going to open up with a story to start off to kickstart this podcast episode. So on the weekend, I went out on a run with my boy Taryn. Okay, so we made one rule. Right, so just to preface it, we started down on Henley Beach, right, and we thought we'd try out a new location this week, right, because we've been doing the same loop from Henley Beach down to Glenelg, down to Brighton, right, down to Sea Clifford, and all the way back. We thought, okay, let's change it up a bit. Let's go the opposite direction. So then we ended up going from Henley Beach, right, down to Semaphore, down to Outer Harbour, and then loop back, right? So we made ourselves one rule this week, right, which was no phones. We're not going to check our Strava stats, right? We're not going to clock, how many kilometers have we done, right? What's our pacing, et cetera, right? So it was just no distractions. We weren't going to track it. It's just let's be in the moment and let's enjoy the run, right? And it's just you, me, the road, and the run, okay? So we initially said let's do 33 kilometers just because I checked the distance beforehand. All right, so when we get back, it'll be 33 Ks or something like that, right? But here's what's interesting and here's what happened, right? We actually overshot that goal. So instead of hitting 33 Ks, we actually ended up doing 35 Ks, right? And the crazy wild part is that we didn't even notice. We didn't even check the phone the entire time. We weren't chasing the metrics, right? We weren't like refreshing the screens, right? We weren't like looking at the pace and et cetera. We were just flowing with it, right? Just having good conversations about life, right? Good conversations about business, just zooming out from the busy, hectic week, right? Enjoying the sunshine, right? It was a beautiful day on Sunday, right? And just enjoying the run, okay, early in the morning. And that's the thing about life, about brands, about magnetism. When you stop checking the scoreboard every single time, every single 5 minutes, you ended up overshooting what you initially thought. And the thing is, like, when you raise the baseline, if you know that you are going to be finishing the race regardless, does it make sense to try to check or have the anticipation? Especially if we set the intention that it's the only thing we're doing today is going for the run and finishing the run, then regardless of what happens in between, in the interim, the run will be finished, because at the end of the day, you will end up back at Henley Beach, and that's it. So if you know that's the case, you're not looking down at your legs and thinking am I moving forward? Because you are moving forward, right? So you're not worried. Are you making progress? Am I making progress? Right? Am I scoreboarding, et cetera, right? Because it's happening, right? You're putting one foot in front of another and it just happens. And you end up overshooting, you end up surprising yourself, right? When you remove yourself from those outcomes there. So most people live by ceilings, right? Most of the time self-imposed, right? A lot of times we tend to be our own harshest judges and harshest critics more than anything else, right? Than anything else, right? So what feels like limits becomes table stakes when you just remove all this, right? So when your baseline is higher than everyone else's ceiling, right, you don't just keep up, you just redefine the game completely. Yeah, and that's the same lesson as well. It's about raising the baseline. You see this universal principle everywhere. So you see it in fitness, when the run that you thought that you never dreamed of, like a distance one time you thought would have been possible, it becomes just your casual Sunday. And you even see it in business as well. What used to feel like a ceiling becomes just a starting point. And right now you see it applies to culture, right? It applies to how you choose to live your life and how you choose to define the perspective of your lived and felt embodied experience as you're going about your day, your week, your month, the seasons of your life, etc. So even the most boring, mundane things becomes legendary, becomes cinematic, becomes mythic, like when you frame these things. So even things like in the back end of GlowOps, right, with our operations, right, cold emails, and just very boring, unsexy things. Or even, for instance, let's take running, right? We're talking about metrics in fitness, Strava stats, right? Or even the shoes you wear. On the surface, these things are mundane. They're not exactly the most exciting, sexy thing to talk about, but when you tell the right story around them, they then become sexy. They can become magnetic. It then becomes cultural gravity. It becomes cultural currency, right? And that's the myth in the mundane, which is the overarching topic of this podcast, right? And that's what I was getting to there. Tying this back to the creator economy, right? There's a polarity playing out at the moment, okay? So internationally, here's the unspoken truth, right? When you take fitness, you take apparel, you take lifestyle beauty brands, direct to consumer brands, right? Across the East, across the West, across emerging markets, across the developed markets, there is a polarity playing out, right? The truth is the factories, the supply chains, the distribution is happening in all of the emerging markets, right? But the aspirational aesthetics, the look, the face, the vibes, that sells, right? Those sits in the West, right? So the way it works is, the way to think about it very simply is the cultural gravity flows west to east, right? But the manufacturing flows east to west, right? And that gap, and that's where that tension, that's where the opportunity, that's where the gap lives, that's where the polarity lives, right? That's where the opportunity lives. So let's break it down together. Emerging market brands, all right? So they've got cash, okay? They've got the supply chains, they can pump out the products at scale. But when it comes to cultural gravity, they're lost. So the briefs that they send out to creators, right, are awkward, right? Their scripts, they feel very AI generated, and the direction doesn't quite translate, okay? And the result is it makes creators feel like sellouts. It turns creators off, right? Because it doesn't feel like something they can naturally get around, right? It has that cringe kind of it kind of factor, right? Now you flip it around the other way. You take your Gymshark, you got Aloe Yoga, you got Riderwears. They got cultural capital baked in, like it's locked in. That's table stakes, yeah. So they are the aesthetic. So they can snap their fingers and they can have 100 micro creators in matching sets tomorrow. But behind the curtains, the challenge is the problem that's faced, especially with a lot of the developed Western brands, right, direct-to-consumer brands, is it's chaos at the moment, right? And it's going to be even more chaos over the coming weeks, right? Especially as we come into Q4, into Black Friday, right? We got ad fatigue, you got your freelancers burning out, right? Campaigns that just don't scale. So they're drowning in content churn. And if you're a creator, particularly listening right now, this is for you as well, because you've lived that cringe brief, right? You've been handed a brief and you're like, it just feels so off, right? Like your body just feels like it's just fighting itself, right? So you've had to hold products that you'd never actually use, you'd never actually get behind, right? And therefore the authenticity or the lack thereof really just bleeds through the screen, right? Or you've had to hold a product you never actually use, you never actually back, right? You need to recite a line that didn't sound like you at all. And deep down, you knew, right? This isn't elevating me, it's actually cheapening me, right? One, because if you're not willing to back a brand, if you're not willing to back a product and a brand and a movement or a mission or what it stands for or doesn't stand for, then you feel cheapened as a result of it. You feel that incongruence, right? But because of that tension and because of that challenge and because of that unique gap that exists in the polarity at the moment, in the creator economy, in the direct-to-consumer markets, in the fitness brands all around the world, right, is the reason why I built GlowOps Media, okay? So I built this curated network here, so it becomes a conduit, it becomes the bridge and the filter, and it's a stage where both sides wins, right? So brands don't just get content, right? They get direction, they get the storytelling, they get the world building that actually land, that actually resonates, okay? So, and the creators on your side, all right, on the creator side, you don't just take the briefs, okay? You step into a system that not only protects your aura, right? It augments, elevates you, right? It makes you feel seen, so that it makes you look, it puts you in front of the opportunities and opens the doors, so you look elevated, you look magnetic, right? You look aspirational, okay? And you're not a random ad. You're not just a random ad that someone scrolls through in someone's feed, right? You're a part of a roster, you're part of a movement, and you're part of a world that people want access to. So what this game is really about is raising the baseline so high, what feels impossible to everyone else becomes your casual Sunday. So it's not about being reasonable, to be honest with you. You want to be so fucking unreasonable in your standards. You don't want to be reasonable, because to be reasonable is to blend into the crowd, and to be reasonable is to be forgettable, is to fade. You want to be unreasonable, and that's how you truly refine a game. And when you live like that, when your baseline is higher than everyone else's ceiling, you don't just keep up, right? You redefine the game. So bring it all back. When me and my boy Taron set out to run 35 kilometers, we said 33, honestly. But when you strip away the distractions, when you strip away the micro stories, the noise that doesn't really actually move the needle forward, right? When you stop checking the scoreboard every 5 minutes, you end up overshooting, right? You raise your baseline without even realizing it, right? Just enjoying yourself, right? Just enjoying a run, just shooting the shit, and etc. Right? It's the same play in business, right? Emerging brands, they raise their baselines when they stop chasing faces and they start actually cultivating story. Developed brands, Western brands, right? They raise the baseline when they stop drowning in the chaos, okay, and they start building systems. And creators raise their baseline when they stop taking just every random brief, right, and start protecting the aura, right? So it's not just about boundaries, it's about the discernment, right? Discernment comes from knowing who the fuck you are, right, and knowing what you stand for, right, what kind of roles you will take on, what you won't take on, etc., right? It's about protecting your aura, protecting your energy and your magnetism, right? And that's how you're able to develop that cultural capital, right? So you get out of chaos and you get out of chasing energy, the hustle energy, right, to one of magnetism, okay? And the inversion it's not about chasing the brands. It's not about chasing clout, right? It's about building a world, first and foremost, that they want access to, and that's the real abundance, right? And that's the status inversion, so to speak, right? So GlowOps isn't for everyone. It's for the ones who know, right? If you're one of them, then you already feel it, you already resonate, and you know where to find me, okay? If this episode sparks something within you, share it with someone who gets it. Don't forget to subscribe, to tune into the podcast episode. I drop one every single week on Monday, right? That's how we grow the circle. That's how we grow this movement. That's how we grow this network here, right? Because culture doesn't just happen. Like I said, it's intentionally curated, right? And it starts by putting one foot in front of the other and building this, right, together. And what the game is really about is raising the baseline so fucking high that what feels impossible to everyone else becomes just a casual Sunday. And when you live like that, your baseline is higher and everyone else is silly. You don't just keep up, you refine the game. That's all from me. I hope you have an amazing rest of the week, and I will talk to you all soon. Take care.